The 37 Requisites of Enlightenment is known as Bodhipakkhya Dhamma. It's the largest and most comprehensive memory structure of precepts and rules in Buddhism. And it serves as the brain's bus loop station for all of them, because it's so comprehensive. So this is a very extensive structure to memorize. But because Buddhism has many smaller groups of precepts, it can be easier to refer to one very large structure that contains all of the roots of each precept group. Then everything is all in one place. And what makes things even easier now that we live in the modern era is that cell phone numbers have become a thing. So there's a slightly easier way to memorize the requisites now, and that is to treat it like a phone number. Because when you look at these groups, you realize that there are 7 groups, each with defined by a certain number of mental qualities or rules. So that phone number would look like, in this case, 8755444. 7 groups, or 7 digits, each with a particular number of traits. And what it primarily contains is the Eightfold Path and the 7 factors of awakening. Now, while many of these concepts may be familiar, like the 5 faculties and powers, some might be more obscure. The structure has a lot of overlap, so many requisites show up in other groups, the same requisites, right? Like mindfulness or energy. If this were designed to only provide unique requirements that are not found in any of the other groups, then the list would only contain 14 unique qualities. So this is comprehensive. It has all of the pre-existing conditions or requirements. It's evident that these concepts were specifically organized for the oral tradition, so people needed memory formulas like this. It's important to remember the context because Asia at the time was a memory culture. The suttas themselves reflect this, consistently presenting information in a specific order. It wasn't random. Everything had its designated place in the recitation. So it strengthens memory and recall, offering a worthwhile challenge. The structure is considered the encompassing teachings. There is sutta recited by the Buddha himself. He declared, "O monks, this is the essence of the entire Dhamma teachings." So these 37 requisites, also known as wings to awakening, serve as hints and suggestions that help you internalize and make sense of this vast collection of suttas. Grasping this overarching view, this architecture of the Dhamma, it grants access to all its significant parts. As I outlined earlier, did you detect a key omission? There is something called the 4 Brahma Viharas, or Brahma Vicharas. These are loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, which are not explicitly included in the 7 requisites. And while some aspects of these virtues, particularly equanimity, appear within the 7 factors of enlightenment or awakening, specifically right concentration, which is the 4th jhana or samadhi, and the nature of the 4th jhana, they are not a separate menu within the 7. So internalizing these concepts prevents them from scattering. A memory device like a phone number aids this. And there are other clever ways to categorize these factors beyond the menus. An interesting approach involves the 5 frequent factors, which highlights that the 37 aren't entirely distinct. So there's significant overlap, but it allows us to cover them in one sitting, basically, to summarize them, to go over them, to understand the essence of it. So the 5 faculties, one of the menus offers a lens to examine these 5 common things. While I could list them now: faith, or saddha; energy, viriya; mindfulness, sati; concentration, samadhi; and wisdom, panya, or panya. This is a neat little small group to grasp. It's a manageable number for memorization, right? So think of it like the 10 commandments. You have 5 core principles instead of 10. But these 5, however, are not neatly divided. And faith finds mention twice within the 37 requisites, while energy appears a whopping 9 times. So these concepts, effort and energy, are intrinsically linked. Effort and energy intertwine, much like mindfulness, the highly celebrated concept that receives 8 mentions. Right, because there are certain qualities that you can't actually obtain properly or at all if you don't have the other ones. So there's some codependence happening, right? A lot of them, like mindfulness, can't be obtained without energy. So grasping the 5 faculties then grants you the understanding of these recurring themes. Faith appears twice, energy 9 times, mindfulness 8 times, concentration 4 times, and wisdom 5 times. Now, given that energy and effort appear 9 times within the teachings, we'll focus on that concept right now. My reason for starting the presentation with this theme is that many viewers are yearning for serenity, and some of them, they may want concentration, like jhana or samadhi, and which of those are mentioned 4 times, but it's considered quite advanced. So concentration shouldn't be approached until you've cultivated sufficient energy. Typically, the attempt to achieve stillness of the mind, concentration, or jhana, or anything like that, samadhi, this fails because there just isn't enough energy to sustain it. You need a lot of concentration. It has to be good concentration where you are self-aware, and you can't fall asleep, because typically when you fall asleep, you lose concentration, you lose cognizance. And where does this exploration of the 5 factors come in? These 5 faculties, faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Well, energy itself has a potential pitfall. It can become excessive. Energy, if unchecked, can become agitation. It can stir up restlessness. And conversely, concentration can become sluggish and dull. So this shows the interdependence of these 2 factors. Energy fuels concentration, which prevents it from becoming dull and fading away into dullness and mechanical, autonomous behavior. Dreamless sleep, or sleepwalking dreams where we have no idea what's going on and we don't remember when we wake up. A lot of people might appear to be meditating deeply, and instead they're in this very state of dullness, mistaking it for meditation, which is very detrimental. Sometimes it happens. We really do just space out, and we're not completely asleep, but we space out, but we lose awareness at the same time, and we just disappear for a while. And sometimes we wake up from that, and we get completely disoriented. Like, where are we? It just hits us where we are, where we're sleeping, what time it is, what day it is. That's not good. That's not meditation. You've lost complete awareness of everything. So true concentration is a vibrant, cognizant, present experience, and it's infused with energy. And a characteristic emotion that often accompanies this state is joy. But, however, at the beginning of a retreat, or if you're just starting this practice, it's important to avoid rushing towards single-pointed focus, the kind of focus used with, binoculars rather than a laser. Meditation cultivates a different kind of concentration. You can't have laser-like concentration all the time. It's more akin to the expansive view of a telescope or binoculars. The ideal state is where everything becomes exquisitely clear. It's not through burning holes through objects. Not by burning holes through that intense focus, but it's an effortless clarity. It's the natural state of your mind. Many beginners approach concentration with that wrong image in mind. They imagine, furrowing their brows and straining their focus, which can lead to headaches and just tension everywhere in your body. Instead of that serene clarity they're supposed to achieve with well-adjusted posture and practice. Kind of like when you have a proper prescription pair of glasses. So that's the essence of clarity we seek. So following this logic that the mind is naturally focused, alert, and serene at the same time, perfectly relaxed and effortless when producing concentration, it is because it's fueled by the right energy. It's the natural state of the mind when it doesn't have conditions and you have energy to fuel it. So when you go to retreats or you practice this, at least in retreats, they emphasize energy cultivation. So when there's the approach of going at your own pace and trying to maintain and keeping the body relaxed, for the first 3 days or so, the focus isn't on absolute stillness or samadhi, but it's just on staying awake and energized and focused enough to get through the meditation without falling asleep, right? The closest emotional state to this is joy. So while a deeper concentration might involve other emotions, joy and energy are the ideal starting point for this kind of meditations, for serenity meditation. The factors of the first jhana, the first absorption, even though they appear much later in the process, they can be cultivated even at this stage. right? Joy, energy, and wakefulness. These are feelings we've all experienced. We all know what it feels like to be joyful or excited, energized, wakeful, or when we have some excitement or pleasure and we feel we're in a good enough mood that we can be nice to people and sincerely kind to others. And it comes from energy. And these are just smaller and much more conditioned, crude states of what can later turn into the first jhana or the second jhana. So meditation refines your ability to cultivate loving kindness, joy, and energy more intentionally. And it allows you to foster these skillful emotions just from within, rather than relying on, in the ordinary mundane world, we rely on coffee and conditions to get us excited and happy, or get a sense of euphoria. But this is not the spiritual way, is it? You don't wait for the world to create, to provoke joy in you. Not at all. And likewise, if you have a problem with the world, you don't change the world, right? As the Buddha said, you put on a thick pair of leather sandals so that nothing can prick you. So you learn to generate it from within. You've always been the source of your own joy. Our own minds and hearts, right, are naturally happy. It's just the conditions, the conditioning filters our conscience, and we feel different, distorted, upset. So let's continue on here. The other aspects, the other factors. You know, it rarely occurs to us to explore how we create our own happiness, and to see that, to realize naturally that it can be generated independently of outside situations. It is possible to experience joy even in an empty room. And this is precisely why people go to retreats in these quiet places, to strip away any and all sorts of complexity or temptations to see if we can cultivate these positive states ourselves. The core of Buddhist practice lies in this very act of self-generation, cultivating these skillful emotions only from one's own effort, one's own resources. So you need a shift in perspective. We begin by emphasizing energy. It's mentioned 9 times within the 37 requisites. This emphasizes right effort in the Eightfold Path. Interestingly, it's nearly identical to one of the 4 right efforts. So while the Eightfold Path simply lists right effort, when you investigate right effort in itself more specifically, that aspect itself has its own kind of submenu, if you will. It has its own conditions, which is why there is something called the 4 right efforts. And the Buddha even takes this concept, including the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and presents them in separate contexts. Right effort is part of the Eightfold Path, and some suttas mention the 4 foundations of mindfulness within the path itself as well. But the Buddha also dedicates entire suttas to elaborating on these specific concepts, providing more detail for each one that's mentioned in the Eightfold Path. And it might be that even in the past 15 years, 15, 20, 25 years, we've needed to revise old teachings to pinpoint the exact start or the origin. Right effort is kind of a curiosity. It seems to be a concept rarely given like a dedicated instruction. There seems to be a very strong emphasis on morality with talks on virtue and so on, or talks on cultivation. There might be retreats focused on mindfulness or loving kindness or the Brahma Vicharas. But the critique of concentration, samadhi, that receives attention too. Yet right effort remains largely overlooked, it seems, despite its importance. With 9 mentions out of 37, it's the most frequently referenced factor, in fact. You might even argue that Buddhism itself is, at its core, a philosophy built on the foundation of effort. So recognizing right effort's centrality is crucial for fostering this independence. The Buddha emerged from civilizations steeped in traditions devoid of personal effort. They relied heavily on deities and spells and rituals to navigate life. So the Buddha's message was a radical departure from this. He proclaimed, "Forget those." In fact, the first stage of enlightenment, in that, one of the requirements is sila paramasa, that's a comprehension. And it's written that you have to set aside the belief that rituals and rites are the means of liberation, the things that set you free. This is across Asia back then. Cultures were deeply ingrained in the idea that rituals held the key benefits in this life and beyond. So the belief system centered on rituals, rites, and magical power, that's what Buddhism dismantles. This reliance on superstition is shed in the first stage of enlightenment. So enlightenment isn't achieved through those means. It comes from understanding the workings of your mind and emotions. The key tool for this development, then, through understanding, is effort. Not just any effort, but right effort. And this is why it's so prominent, because genuine effort directed towards transforming your mind is crucial. It's the right effort for changing your mind, and it boils down to 4 aspects. First, you need to identify what needs to be let go of, unhelpful mental states that create suffering. Second, you cultivate qualities that might be absent, but would be beneficial. And third, once you have some positive mental states established, you strive to sustain them. And finally, the 4th right effort involves actively preventing future negative emotions from arising, preventing that on a moment-to-moment basis, always watching yourself. Anything like hostility or agitation or laziness, restlessness, these 5 hindrances, which are particularly important because they obstruct progress the most. Remember, the Buddha taught that desire, hatred, and delusion, or ignorance, are the root problems of suffering, the root causes. And generosity, kindness, and wisdom are the antidotes. Hostility and agitation, these are the 2 most significant hindrances to address. It's interesting to note the order mirrors the core teaching. Desire precedes hostility. So this recurring order helps with memorization. these 5 hindrances, these obstacles in the path that need to be prevented. So the best advice to stop trouble is to stop it before it starts. So the Buddha offers practical guidance and suggests that you have to do your best to uproot these emotions from deep within. And that's part of how we do it, is preventing them from being felt in the first place. And once negativity does take root, it's far harder to take out, and that's why it's so important. Anger is like a critical mind, festers with resentment and revenge, and it distorts your thinking. It's best to stop it before it spirals out. And you're far better off starting your day with this kind of awareness, to acknowledge the challenges you'll face before you get on with the day. A possibility for difficult people and situations or complexities, things that stress you out. You always have to remember that anger won't help. It's a destructive emotion. It only makes things worse. It really, really does obscure your perception. It contorts your actions. It burns through your emotional and physical well-being, and it damages your happiness. So it's good to set this intention first for some people in the morning. They start with resolving to prevent anger from arising altogether. And it's kind of better, because if you stumble blindly into your day, rushing out of your door and just with your coffee, and you skip breakfast and you're almost late for work, you're very likely to fall victim to it. Agitation starts setting in. People start annoying you. You can't blame anyone. It's just your fault that you're angry, or that you're almost late for work. And things can get worse from there. So prevention is key. This brief reflection sets the intention. You can meditate in the morning for this. It's like it doesn't have to be a deep meditation. It can be like an affirmation. It can be like a mindful reflection. So these 4 right efforts mirror the right effort within the Eightfold Path. But what if these hindrances arise despite our efforts? Then the next step is the removal stage. And techniques do exist to dismantle them, but the simplest approach is prevention itself. It's that firm decision that today I'm choosing not to get ruled by my anger or by these distractions or whatever it is. The same principle applies to greed, desire. And while anger is more destructive, desire also cultivates a sense of loss. Wanting it by itself implies a lack. The very moment you crave something, you experience a sense of deficiency. It's like going into debt. Before the craving even arose, you weren't lacking anything. It's the desire itself that creates the illusion of absence. And conversely, when you relinquish the need for things, you cease to feel deprived. It's all a matter of your mind. All of this work is psychological when it comes to preventing and removing the hindrances. So understanding the 5 hindrances is essential. We've covered greed and hatreds, in other words, desire and anger. These are potent terms encompassing even mild irritation and aversion. Right, and so hatred and aversion, they're similar. They're labeled as the same quality for simplicity, but when we talk about aversion, when we use the word aversion, it's a broader term, and that can just refer to. So it may not be hate or anger. It could just be a sense of discomfort not wanting something. These hindrances exist on a spectrum, of course, so they can be very subtle, from a subtle discomfort to extreme states. So our awareness needs to cover this entire range. It can't just be for the obviously felt emotions that get our attention without any effort. We have to put a lot of effort into spotting when these disturbances come about, because they can get worse. And we are so used to feeling negative emotions anyway that we tend to shut our attention away from them a lot of the time. We don't even notice them so much of the time because we're used to it. Used to feeling a lot of stress and used to feeling worry all the time. We're used to feeling annoyed. Now our agitations and laziness. Recall the 5 faculties, energy being the second. So laziness is the antithesis of energy. But what hinders concentration? Well, let's pause to reflect on the missing faculty from the 5. Agitation. So when concentration goes away, or if it dwindles, then it tips into agitation. So that when concentration dwindles, it tends to be because of a lack of energy. Or if the energy is still there, but you're not using it in meditation or concentration, then it can turn to restlessness. And this is the bipolar spectrum, the manic depressive state in a milder form. Everyone experiences some degree of this, the ups and downs in life, the inflation and deflation of your mood. Human personalities can exhibit extremes of both directions, but while important, agitation and laziness or sloth or sluggishness hold a secondary position compared to desire and anger. These 2 hindrances are the most dominant and problematic. Desire and anger are more deeply ingrained in human nature. Though even these states can be stabilized, we can work with them. Noticing low energy is the first step, then strategies are needed to cultivate energy. And recognizing stagnation, the low energy itself, comes first. Next, specific techniques exist to uplift energy. Many traditions offer methods for this. For instance, contemplating the impermanence of life. We think, how long do we have? How long do I have? When will it end? The Buddha isn't suggesting a specific age, a peaceful death at 90, for example. No, any moment could be your last. We need comprehension of this. It's not just another ordinary day. It could be your last one. How would you choose to spend it? I don't know. I don't remember if it was the Buddha that said this, but somebody, a master or the Buddha, said that if you spend your day in foolishness, then you're spending your life this way. And it's probably because we have such a repetitive nature that if we're seeing something that we're in one day that we're doing with a lot of effort or with a lot of intent, it's probably that, or a lot of desire, we're probably doing this regularly all the time. So what you do in a day could potentially reflect how you spend your whole life, repeating the same inconducive actions. So this very contemplation can rouse you from, it should rouse you from sluggishness or a lack of motivation or despondency. And there are real life examples everywhere. You might be drowsy and lethargic, then suddenly there's a gunshot that rings out in the next door apartment or at the mall or at school even. You could be a drowsy clerk at a pet store longing for the afternoon to end, and suddenly the door bursts open and somebody enters and threatens you, the whole give me all your money situation. And in that instant, you would be jolted awake, brimming with energy. So stark reminders of life's fragility, the absence of guarantees will ignite this spark. So hold on to that awareness. Don't let the precariousness and the mundaneness of human existence fade from your mind. Energy can be cultivated in other ways too. Many other ways, of course. So consider not only through this sort of urgency and fear, but the opposite. When you cherish memories of love and kindness and beauty, life's highlights, connecting with your friends and loved ones or your pets, or acts of creation, your art and music, or moments immersed in nature. These positive experiences can, they just simply uplift your spirit, and they make you feel nice, and they can help you out of your stagnation. There are all sorts of tools. Coffee helps. And I always mention that, but I always have to say that, the caffeine is super powerful, so don't have too much of it. Even 3 or 4 cups is too much nowadays. By the government standard, and also from you'll experience this yourself, you don't even want 3 cups of coffee. So right effort isn't just about battling negativity through preventing removal. It encompasses fostering the positive as well. And when you experience joy or energy, don't dismiss it with the feeling of, this too shall pass. Because this is a good thing. You don't need to think that way. It's not an indulgence. It's a beneficial thing to have energy. The Buddha, while acknowledging impermanence, reminds us of our responsibility to cultivate and sustain positive supra-normal states. But it starts with the mundane positive states of happiness and joy and excitability, or just excitement and enthusiasm. I should have mentioned this the first, though, of course. The basis of energy is the sexual. You need to transmute the sexual energy. The first step is chastity, or brahmacharya. So that's foundational. That's really the first step. I should have mentioned that first. The only way to do this is to renounce sex, particularly the orgasm. You have to work on that. It helps to work on that gradually. People can't really just stop that all at once. It's too difficult. So gradually work on reducing that, and you will retain the essence this way. Because the sexual potency comes from the sexual fluids and the organs. Now, a third aspect of right effort involves cultivating positive states. If such states are absent, use your mind to create them. And you don't want to passively observe emotions as they come and go either. It's not just that. That attitude of not having emotion, not feeling anything, and having full emotional control, but being cold on the inside. The way that, some schools in Kung Fu, they teach the monks to not show emotion, and especially during tests, it's part of their tests when they go through examinations and graduations. But that's their way of behaving. Really, on the inside, what you're supposed to be cultivating is the superior emotions. You want to develop the superior emotional center. So you don't want to be empty. or void of feeling. An egoless person is not dull like that, actually. So it's not the Buddha's teaching. He advocated for developing and sustaining the superior emotions, and there are through mental activities, particularly loving-kindness meditation, right, the jhanas. That's where we immerse ourselves in the superior emotions. And without cultivating the previous requirements of energy and joy beforehand, any attempts at reaching it will likely fail. So after some practice of the mundane positivity, just mundane feelings of enthusiasm and joy, there's a point where you could